So this is the setup of the third scenario in the Combat Commander Europe. So this is between Germans and Russians, or Soviets. So the Germans could set up three columns of hexes here, and then the rest of the map for the Russians. And the Soviets control all the objectives. And so my initial idea for the Germans was to concentrate force on one side of the map, keep everybody together, and I was going to push through the forest, kind of come around instead of going through the open areas. And then I did take the option of setting up the wire after the Germans set up. So the Russians put the wire here in front of their units because the Germans would immediately get stuck, kind of slow down the movement around certain areas. But then I realized the Soviets' gunnery range on their units is only 2 hexes, and the Germans are 5. So what I should have been doing is set up here in concentrated force and kind of sit back and just shoot everybody through the areas that they can reach out and get these guys. Would have been the better setup, except if they might have put the more wire in the open areas to get them stuck. But now, since it was set up this way, the Germans are thinking I should use, try to shoot these guys up across the open area, but just start shifting and moving this way through the more open areas, and they can plink these guys from distance. The only thing is, with the machine gun here and here are the only full ranged units that can get them. But as pushing through here might work. That will force the Russians or Soviets to shift forces too. So we'll see how that plays out. And hopefully for the Germans, because they're an attacker, each time they time out and use their deck, the Soviet player will gain a victory point. Because they're burning through the deck quicker on their draws, where the defender is not. But also when the defender times out, I think reading the rules that they get a VP too. So it'll be up to the Germans, see if they can shift things quickly enough and take the objectives as fast as they can. And even if the Russians push this way, they're still only with range of 2, so the Germans can sit off and basically shoot from a distance and try to break them over time, and then just take the map after everybody's gone. So that's the German plan, and the Soviets are going to try to stop that. So onward. So this is the situation after a few hands, actually quite many, because they weren't drawing any movement. So everybody was kind of slowly advancing down for the Germans. The Russians have kind of pushed off here out of the forest, because if the Germans are moving around, they need to cover these objectives over here. The Germans actually advanced and meleeed and took this objective, did some shooting. The Russians actually broke the German unit here and was going to do an advance and have a chance of meleeing those guys out, because these militia guys are not very good. but the Germans had ambush, and the roll was very poor for the Soviet player, so he got eliminated. So the Soviets are actually down 2 from losses here, but the Soviets have been able to move out. They had an event that every unit that wasn't under officers was suppressed, but luckily the Soviet player had recovery, so that kind of went away. But the Germans have their suppressed guy out here because of an event, got suppressed, and so everybody's kind of slowly moving here. The Soviets failing here could have really turned the tide against, helped a little bit, not turn the tide for the Russian player. So on to some more hands. So after the few hands, the Germans' plan is somewhat working quite well, but they were lucky is that they've moved along, kind of shifted over to take this objective. The unit there manning the medium machine gun was taken out, but also the medium machine gun was kind of trapping the Germans down here in this open area. Kind of broke a few units, kind of suppressed units, but it broke, and due to that the Germans are like, can move forward and concentrating fire on them, so they move back here to kind of hopefully fix the gun and defend the final objectives here in the back, and hopefully delay them more. But also the Soviet player keeps rolling the time die, which is double sixes, so the timer track is getting closer, so it's putting pressure on the Germans to get their going, because it's also increasing the victory points for the defender, and if the game ends quickly enough, the Germans are going to be losing because of the lack of victory points. But they have killed 5 units. So this is the end of the game status. It came down to the Russian Soviets surrendered, hit their surrender mark, game ended, but they had plus 22 victory points, which didn't matter, which is kind of interesting, is that even with the Germans not even getting all the objectives, they won outright, even though the Soviets had a massive victory point lead. A lot of the game was kind of stuck down here because the Soviets couldn't fire. They kind of hid in the woods so they wouldn't be shot up, as the Germans were kind of stalled here, and they slowly had to wait for cards to come up to move, so burning through the deck. But also both sides kept hitting the time card a bunch of times and got the time limit hit. And as you can see, the Soviets were pretty much done, because the other problem, again, they start shooting the Germans coming up to this building, and the machine gun breaks like after 1 or 2 shots. It was very poor card draws for the Soviets, so they just got stomped. But when you range is only 2, it kind of get problematic. But as the Germans were moving through here, one of the squads came up, and the Soviet player took the advantages of, they had many cards of advance, and they could do a melee attack on the Germans. Then they tried that, and the Germans actually had ambushes, so they got broken immediately and got wiped out, and that's what triggered the surrender. The Soviets were hoping to whittle the Germans down by using melee attacks in the forest here, but it didn't work out. So that was scenario 3. Bit slow playing, waiting for cards. Kind of frustrating for the Soviet player. Didn't do much because of how things played out for their guns breaking, and so interesting little play here.